Ralph Riegel. He's the Southern correspondent for the Irish Independent, and he's written a number of books. The Afraid of the Dark and Hidden Soldier and Death in December as well, a number of different books. And most recently as well, Ralph, you've written a book on the effect of victims of crime, a book called Shattered.
Has anyone here been the victim of fraud, scam, or any type of financial duplicity? You have?
Small one, €79.
Right. Yeah. But I'll be honest with you.
Bad advertising.
I was too,
yeah.
And it was €10. And I would love to kill the man if I could find him now. And it was actually at the ploughing championships about 14 years ago, where I gave 10 quid for a non-existent charity to build a handball alley that had been, it's a perennial acorn at the ploughing championships. They try and get this guy, but he does a quick hit on the first day, gets his money and disappears for another year. So it's very commonplace. I actually tell a lie in terms of the fact that it was just the €10 for our friend at the ploughing championships that I got knobbed on. About 6 months ago, I didn't get caught, but in my own opinion, I got caught because I actually engaged this person in conversation instead of hanging up. Most of my work is done over a computer, and because papers are very serious about in-house security because so many different publications feed into their computers, they have exceptionally strong software, security software, to the point where on my laptop I can't even use the CD drive. That's just how paranoid they are about security. So lo and behold, out of the blue, I got a phone call from this very nice lady saying, I'm ringing you from Microsoft. There's a serious problem with your computer. If you don't address the software problems now, you risk having your hard drive compromised. At which point, I had a book on my computer, so I freaked. I said, right, hang on. Let me go into the computer. I sat down, was just about to hit the keyboard, and some little light went off in my head. And I said, can I ask who you're ringing from? And she gave me this very impressive sounding name of a company. And I said, where are you based? Oh, we're based on Dame Street in Dublin. And I said, can I have your phone number? And the phone went dead. Do you know? And about 3 weeks later, I read about this great scam where they con people to log onto your computer, go to a website, disable your own security. You download programs which then copy and email any financial data or personal data that I can find on your computer. And I spend most of my life in court writing about these things, and I almost did it myself. So it brings us, I suppose, to really why do these things happen? And I think it's, if you go back to Moses coming down Mount Sinai, are people really that different then than they are now? And I suspect that ultimately they're not. You may not have heard of credit cards and you may not have heard of gold bullion, but you probably fancied having a couple of your neighbour's sheep or goats for a good night at the tavern on a Saturday night. So, greed was always a pretty serious human vice. And gullibility, I think, follows very closely after it. And I mean, they're the two things that time and again crop up when you deal with cons and scams. Some of them are actually quite distressing. I mean, I covered a case, I'm not sure if any of you remember it, but last November we did a story about a man called Tommy Abbott who was living on the north side of Cork, lived alone, very quiet, very isolated kind of existence. But he saved his money every week because he couldn't stand spending Christmas alone in his house. So he would save up a little bit every week and he would go to a hotel for Christmas. That was his treat for himself. And a guy called to his door asking him where his money was. He said his money was in the credit union. The guy gave him a great speech about, no, credit union, you're not getting a great rate of interest there. Credit unions are all in trouble because of the financial crisis. You need to put that into a special savings account where it's guaranteed. Took the money out of the credit union, gave the money to the guy disappeared. And we wrote the story. The guy was very upset, the poor man. I mean, it may not, I think it was about €800 was taken. It may not seem like an awful lot of money to any of us, but to him, it was his life. It was as if the sky had given him. And I suppose the encouraging aspect of it was that the footnote to that story was that a hotel, several restaurants, and several good Samaritans in the city all chipped in. And actually he ended up getting, I think, a Christmas that would have cost him €4,000 had he paid for it himself. But it's indicative of the fact that the vulnerable are always the ones that seem to be targeted by these type of offences. Another famous one. Has anybody ever had any encounter, close or distant, with the legendary Nigerian bank scam? No? I would say genuinely I'm writing about it for 10 years, and there are still an average of 14 people a year caught by it. In fact, one person in this city was caught by it last year to the tune of €25,000. Now, it's almost unbelievable that that could happen, but it did. Because the person involved was actually going through quite a serious health problem, and I suspect that the individuals caught her when she was at a low ebb. And the trick with these scams always is, once you're sucked in, you can't get out, and people seem to spend good money after bad. You don't want to lose €500, so you'll put another €500 in the hope that you get back the original 5, and it actually ends up spiraling. That particular woman, what happened to her was she received a phone call from a very officious sounding individual who gave her various bank details or whatever, and told her that what was the disturbing aspect of it was the person knew she had been on holidays and knew she had bought some of these lottery cards. And you'll often find that some of the Nigerian scams tend to morph into the Spanish lottery scam, which is the famous El Gordo, the fat one, as it's known, because it's one of the biggest jackpots in the world. And because of the number of people from Ireland that go on holidays to Spain and Canaries and whatever, there's a huge link between the countries, and people buy lotto tickets and come home. The number of people that have been caught on the back of this scam is just, you just wouldn't believe it. We have a lottery ticket. You bought a lottery ticket when you were on holidays in Spain? Oh, I did. Well, you've actually won quite a big prize here, but we can't send it to you directly. We have to actually send it by bank transfer. Well, that's great. Yeah, but the bank transfer fees are very expensive here in Spain. You will have to send us X amount to cover the transfer, and so on, so on, so on. And people end up spending hundreds, if not thousands, trying to get something that actually isn't there. You know? And I suppose that brings us on then to the other one, which is a very controversial one here in Cork because it got such high profile, the West Cork pyramid scheme. Now, most people have heard something about it. It started about 2005, and it was linked to a German company. They were based in Munich, and they were very clever in lots of ways. They were clever in that, number one, they spotted a loophole in the law. Pyramid schemes are illegal. There's laws there against them, but they are very difficult to prove, and it's based on the whole thing of an investment. That I come to you, I ask you to invest €10,000 in my company, and I promise you a return of maybe 15,000 or 20,000. But then you have to go to someone else and get them to invest 10,000 with you, and so it goes on. The people that are in early make good money. The people that are in last end up getting hosed, and seriously hosed. The problem in this case was that the company had identified loopholes within the laws of various countries. So what they did was they made people sign a document that they were not investing money, they were gifting money, which meant ultimately it was exceptionally difficult for the DPP to take a case, because these people were knowingly, willingly, and with verifiable proof, because they have a signature on a document, gifting the money to someone else. Now, how it worked at the start was that you would invest 10,000, you would then go and get maybe 5 or 6 people to invest another 10,000, and you would fly to Munich to go to a named hotel. There would be a room number left at reception for you. You would go up to the room, you would wait an hour, there'd be a knock on the door, some mysterious gentleman with sunglasses would arrive and hand you a suitcase with, in certain cases, if you invested, I think it was 20,000, you got 80,000. And people did. And this began in about 2005. And by 2006, it had snowballed to the stage where it was all over West Cork. It was in Kerry. It had gone to Ennis. There was one individual who drove from Donegal to West Cork to gift money to the scheme. And then suddenly, when the word got out, the scheme, as all pyramid schemes do, it teetered and collapsed. And then the fun started. because in certain cases a number of individuals didn't like the idea of losing €10,000. Now, as a person who still remembers losing 10 quid at the ploughing championships 12 years ago, I can fully empathise with the fury and righteous indignation of a person who was €10,000 to the bad. And there were serious assaults. In one case there was a false imprisonment, which I think came before the Circuit Criminal Court. I can't recall what happened to it afterwards, but what was sad about those cases was that most of the people that were brought in either by friends, by neighbours, or by even relatives. So it was, I mean, scamming anyone is obviously a bad thing, but to do it to someone that you know, that you love, or worse, that you're related to, makes it, it's just, you know, the consequences of it. And the consequences are still rumbling on. I mean, there are still stories being written about what happened in West Cork, because it became a little bit like a mass hysteria. And it harkens back to, you know, what I mentioned about why do people get involved in these things? Why do people not? Why don't the alarm bells go off that, you know, if the bank can only offer you a return of 3.2%, and then you get hammered by dirt on that, where are these guys coming out with 100% returns, or in certain cases a 200% return on the money that you can invest, you know? And I think my own little tuppence worth is that, you know, greed is a terribly, I think, intoxicating thing, that if you see your neighbour put 10,000 into something and they get 20,000 or 30,000 back, the prospect of not being involved in that must be galling, because I think we all live in fear of missing that next good thing. Do you know, if there's a great opportunity, will you be sharp enough? Will you be in the right place to take advantage of it? And it seems to shut off all of the security sensors in your head to say, hang on a second now, is this really too good to be true? You know? And that's what happened. A lot of people just saw the money that was being made, heard the stories of the suitcases coming back from Germany, and decided, yeah, I want a little bit of that. You know? And the other side of it is that people, I suspect, knew it was a pyramid scheme, but were willing to go along with it once they weren't the ones at the very end of the scam, that they were the ones that were going to get their money back, or going to get some return on their money. You know, I'm sure most weren't, but I have got that feeling that a lot of people got involved against their better judgment because they thought there was good money to be made. You know, and it's true right across society, that in terms of the levels that people, or the lengths that people will go to relieve us of our cash. I mean, false charities. I mean, just, you know, you go from the blatantly obvious, which is, people know the Sick Poor Society fountain inside the English market. People aware of that? No. If you come into the English market from, is it Cook Street? Princess Street, exactly. You used to have the vegetable stalls on your left hand side, and right in front of you. Exactly. Right below the farm gate, there's a lovely fountain. And that fountain used to be full of water. And people would throw coppers or coins into it for the Sick Poor Society. And lo and behold, certain individuals discovered that this was a great source of income. So they would come along, and in literally less than 15 seconds would scoop all the coins out into a bag and leg it. So the Sick Poor Society, this was quite a valuable source of income for them. So they said, we don't really want to lose this. So they put a grate over, an iron grate over the fountain. Bolts, the whole lot. You could still put the coins in, but you couldn't actually access the water. At which point, the individuals, who shall remain nameless, didn't want to lose their newfound source of income, so they brought bolt cutters. And relieving the fountain suddenly took 25 seconds instead of 15 seconds, but they were still able to do it. And the net result of it all is, the fountain is now dry.